Last week, my wife's car started acting up. We ran over to the vets for the dogs for some checkups, and the little temperature light on the car started flashing on and off, and the temperature gauge actually started going from like halfway up and bouncing to zero, and halfway up, bouncing to zero, and then that little check engine light came on. Yeah, that was the gauge. It was just kind of like uncontrollable. So I put my little code reader on it, and it had a code of P1289. And I looked around online and found out it was a cylinder head temperature sensor that had something to do with it. So I looked around, I couldn't find it. Finally, I found a picture online of where it's located, and turns out there's a little rubber plug in the middle there, and it's down under there. Now, these don't use any kind of a water temperature sensor. They just sense the temperature in the cylinder head, so it's completely different than anything I've ever seen before. Anyhow, I did locate it, and I ordered a new one online. I found one on Amazon, and actually, what a crummy picture here. But it's made by a company by the name of NGK, and I've bought spark plugs from them for years, and this was actually one that was made in America. I couldn't believe that. So I decided to try it. It's not an OEM Ford one, but it was only like $22, so it's made in America, and I think the Ford ones were made in China from what I could tell, and cost twice as much. So that's what it looks like. It's got a probe that goes down the cylinder head, and it's got a sealer on the threads and a couple pins on top. Now, one thing I was lucky that I had was you need a 19 millimeter deep socket that's kind of hollow all the way down. All my other ones had like a little stop down in there, but this one, luckily, I found it's an old Craftsman socket, probably about 40 years old, and that one was open all the way down. You can see how that connector goes way up in there, and it just fits perfect. So if you run into this problem, you do need a socket that will work with this sensor. And then there's a little lock on the connector there, and I tried using the screwdriver to pop it off, but I just broke the little plastic tab off the connector there. But eventually I was able to get that lock pushed in and get it off. Luckily I didn't damage it enough so the new one wouldn't lock on. And that's what it looks like way down in there. And it's just carefully get down in there, make sure the socket's seated on it so you don't just snap the top off of it and remove it. Now, I didn't know if it was going to be water or antifreeze or anything coming out of it, but it was dry in there, so you don't have to drain any fluids or anything. And I didn't disconnect the battery or anything because these computer cards are, they're sensitive when you start doing that. So took the old one out, and there you can see the old one was actually made out of brass. The new one's made out of aluminum, but looks to be identical. And I think aluminum is better for heat transfer anyway, but what do I know? So it's a 2-minute job just to take the old one out and get the new one in. A little tough kind of making sure that the threads get started right, because you don't want to, you're in an aluminum head, and this is actually an aluminum part, so you don't want to cross thread it or anything. So you just have to be real careful and get it started, and then just tighten it down and make sure that you don't tighten it too tight. That's one thing that I read you could do is damage these things if you torque them too much. And I'm not sure if this video will be useful to anybody else, but hopefully it is if they have the same problem. So that, it doesn't take long to change these over, and hopefully it solves the problem. We'll see in a second. Then once that's all tightened down, I did see one video where they said that you should put some silicone around this when you put it back in, but this was over 20 years old, and there was no moisture or anything down in the hole there, so I'm just gonna leave it like this and just try to snap it back in. And it does, once you get the thing plugged in there, I wish my fingers were half the size sometimes and bend a little bit better, but you can see it's a little bit of a problem to get it going, but once you do get it pushed down on there and it snaps in and that little lock pops out, locks it in place. and then you just have to get that little rubber boot sealed back in there like that. So now it's time to go inside and start the car up and look at it. And they had that little light there that was flashing on and off as the gauge was going down that, started the problem. So I'm just going to start it up now and let it run for a while and see what happens. Also going to plug my code reader in here. And I lost the video about that. I thought I had videotaped it, but it didn't show up. But what I did is I went in and I actually reset the that one code, that P1289, which with this little junky reader resets the whole computer. So I'm starting out all over again. But you can see it came up to temperature. Everything remains steady, and if you're ever going to work on one of the newer cars, you really do need something like this to be able to read the codes. Now, I got this years ago, but it still works. They all seem to be about the same. Now, when you reset the computer, you turn the key on, and you wait for about 15 seconds, and if that light starts flashing there, it means that the computer is not ready for emissions testing. So you have to follow the manual. They give you instructions of how to, what to do, how to drive it and stuff to get that light to go away. You basically have to retrain the computer on there. But you can see my check engine light's gone. Everything's gone. And the sensor seems to have been the problem. I'll let you know how it works out over the long time. You can also reset these computers just by disconnecting the battery cable for about 30 seconds. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.